recording. There we go. All right. So really we're doing more of the same stuff today, primarily. I'm just going to be working on finishing this up. We'll kind of do a little bit more work here.
I think you've been muted the entire time, Mr. Roberts.
Have I been muted? Let me see here. Actually, I think you're right. Yep. Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys. All right. I guess I'm now not muted. It's kind of funny. So basically, yeah. Thank you for reminding me. That's usually not the case, but this case it was this time. So we had this start, slightly later start just because we had to do some paper fill in for progress checks. The progress check system is kind of down a little bit. It seems like it's up and running now. So we're kind of taking care of that a little bit this morning. There is a progress check assignment, and it's just the same old normal progress check assignment stuff that we do. So just keep that in mind, right? Just submit screenshots, what you have, things like that. I've got everybody for attendance, so everybody's here. So I was also doing that like we normally would. And what I wanted to show you guys today was really more of the same stuff, right? I am going to show you guys and start to introduce you guys to the ability to reorient your manipulators a little bit. We'll actually take advantage of it a little bit on, because I'm going to probably do a little bit of a grill for this as well. But I'll show it on the wheels really quick, and we'll just kind of finish up the hood. So first and foremost, one of the things I wanted to get you guys to see, you're not going to need it all the time, but when you do need it, it's really, really cool. So I'm going to hit 4 for object mode, right? And I'm going to click on the tires, all right? Because remember, I've got my wheels as their own object, right? Because we did that whole right-click. We could separate polygons out if we need to. And I'm going to go to 3 for face mode. So I'm in face mode. And of course, you have things like your separate features, separate by selection. That's how we got the kind of wheel wells separated as a whole totally different object from the wheels, right? And that's like that second video. I show how to do that. So if you ever need to go back and check that out again, it's that second video. So one of the things we could, of course, do is we can select everything, right? Control A will select all. Now, if I turn my scale tool on, right, like let's say hit R for scale, right, by default, and you'll see it right up here, you'll notice that there is this area kind of right up here. It's kind of right below the animation and rendering kind of workspaces. You'll see something that says global, right? And if you click on that, you'll see that you could change to local, which is kind of object-based, normal, which is based on the normal direction. Remember, that's just the direction your polygon, edge, or vertex kind of points, right? You can even set it to view. And cursor, right? We haven't used cursor that much yet, but we'll eventually get to use it some more. It's quite cool. But you do have some good options right here. What's really cool is you'll also notice this little plus. You can actually save to an edge or a vertex, and it'll kind of save to that orientation, which is really, really cool. And then you can just delete it later on. You can have multiple saved. So it's kind of really neat. So this gives you the ability to kind of change how the manipulator is kind of rotated, right? Its orientation. However, you'll notice right next to global looks like a chain link, right? And if you go on that, you'll see that this is kind of more like the position, right? See, that's the transform pivot point, where this is the transform orientations, right? So the orientation is kind of how it's rotated, how it's pointing, whereas the one next to it, the link, is its pivot point, right? It's kind of like its center, right? Its position. And you can do it to the bounding box, the cursor, medium points average, active elements, quite cool. It's kind of whatever was kind of last selected or first selected. It's kind of whatever you've got as your active element. But there's also individual origins. And so really, I'm just going to show you individual origins right now. And you can actually assign a quick key to this thing. So if I was to just right click, you'll notice you can actually assign a shortcut to bring up this menu and this menu, right? But right now I have it set to, by default, it's set to medium, right? Because you can see how there's different cursor icons here set to median point, that kind of link. Now that means if I hold down middle mouse button, you see how it scales the wheels in towards the center, right? Because median is middle. So kind of the default is set to median point, and that is your center for the whole entire selection, right? Which means that if I scale this, both these wheels are going to scale towards the center of where the manipulator's at. However, if I click on this little chain link and I switch it to individual origins, right? Individual origins. And I was kind of showing this to Xander and Dylan yesterday briefly. I think Giovanni in class, right? When we went to asynchronous. individual origins, right? So if I click on individual origins, you see how it kind of changes that icon there. Now you'll notice when I do middle mouse button, you see how each wheel scales independent of the other one. So I can get him to be a go-kart, right? So that's neat, isn't it? Right? And you can combine these in different ways, right? So if I wanted to, we could have kind of individual origin, and then we could do like normal or cursor or something like that, right? So there's kind of some neat things we could do with that. So you've got some really, really cool options here that you can use for this. So if I was to say like maybe just select these wheels here, right? And I could just change it back to medium point. You'll notice kind of whatever you selected, right? So I selected this one as my selection, and then I just did select linked. You'll notice that that is white, right? You see how it's kind of a bit different than the yellows. So if I was to go here and go to active element, you'll notice now that it scales towards the active element. And whatever the element is, see how you can just kind of leave that on, and that becomes your active element? That's really, really cool, right? So just this little link one can do some really neat stuff for you, right? But you can even switch to, say, like normal direction, which in this case you're not going to see much of a difference there, right? It's kind of one of those things where right now it's not going to behave any different than the other ones would. But it's kind of neat that you have this functionality if you do indeed need it, right? So if I was to click on a face, you see how normal kind of lines it up exactly to that face, right? So that's where if I wanted to, I could just scale those in like that direction or scale those in just along that. So kind of neat, right? And you see how we can kind of combine them a little bit if we wanted to. You see how they kind of all work independently of each other. So you're not always going to need those, right? And right now we don't really need them per se. But I did want to make sure to show you guys that you can actually change the orientation and the position of your manipulators. And when you can combine all these different ones with those different ones, you get some quite excellent ability to reorient manipulators. There's even a few other little tricks you could do that are cool. One of my favorite moto tricks was the ability to kind of make fan blades that rotate around a something that's not along the center and kind of X, Y, or Z aligned. You can actually do that with your cursor alignment tools. So Blender's ability to reorient its manipulators just with these, but then a few other little options that are available elsewhere in Blender, is quite excellent. It's kind of right up there with Moto's and definitely better than Maya's stock stuff. Maya's stock ability wasn't horrible, but not quite as robust as this, whereas like Moto's. So Blender has really excellent abilities to reorient your manipulators to whatever you want them to be. Probably the biggest, most useful ones are things like global, normal, cursor, and pretty much any one of these will be useful in here, actually. But you have the ability to kind of pick different orientations and different pivot point positions for your manipulators. And those will stay on as long as that's turned on, right? So if you've wondered what the heck are these guys next to our snap tools, right, because the magnet's all of our snap stuff, these are your abilities to reorient your manipulator, right? So Blender's quite good at that, quite excellent. And I just wanted to get you guys to see some of that functionality because you might actually really enjoy that individual origin feature for things like your tires, right? So quite neat. And I just want to make sure to kind of get you guys to see that a little bit. And I'll kind of do a little more on like some braces here in a minute. All right. So of course, 4 for object mode, and then I can go back out to click on just the body, right? Remember, you can click on them right in viewport, left click. Of course, they are in your outliner here as well. And then, of course, I can go to, say, 2 for edge mode, right? 2 for edge mode. Switch back to my tweak tool because I like that one on there. And now what we want to do is we really just want to kind of finish up this hood, right? Now, in this case, I really feel like I want there to be kind of a little bit more of a flow like this one that keeps continuing through here. So I'm going to maybe tweak that edge in here a little bit more, right? Remember, that's your tweak tool. Q toggles through all your different selection types. There's 4 of them. Remember, if you left-click drag, they're right there. I've just got a quick keys assigned to them. And tweak allows you to do normal selection stuff, but it's also just your tweak tool like it was in Maya. And I really feel like I need an extra edge loop here. So Alt-C for loop cut, right? And then you can just click to put an edge loop in there. And, of course, I could adjust that shape a little bit more if I wanted to. Remember, when you click to tweak it, it leaves it selected, so it's pretty easy just to switch to E for rotate, Middle mouse button to do a bit of view rotate, and then just switch back to your tweak tool and just adjust it. And then what I want to do is I want to select this edge, and I'm going to shift left click this edge, right? Because remember, shift adds to selections. Now I've got a quick key shift B set to this, but that's not it by default. So if you right click, remember you have bridge edge loops, and that will bridge those edges right there. Now remember, this has its own options box, right? Technically you can kind of get this stuff through the little bar on the side here, but also kind of this bottom left corner has that little mini menu that says bridge edge loops. If you click on that, it opens it, and you'll notice you can actually add number of cuts, right? As well as twists. So you do actually have some options here for how you want to adjust this with cuts. In this case, I'm okay without that because I can just go in here and Alt-C to do a loop cut right there. Then I can tweak that. Remember, 1 for vertex, so you can actually leave your tweak tool on and switch to your different selection types, right? So 2 for edge mode, and my tweak tool's still on. And when you get used to that, it's actually really, really cool, and it makes the overall workflow for Blender quite excellent. Now in this case, I'm going to left click that, shift left click, shift left click, shift left click, right? Because I don't want the whole edge loop here. I do want this edge and this edge not selected. And then of course, right click, bridge edge loops, and you see it automatically welds those. And you see we've got this kind of nice little flow through here, right? So that's what I was kind of trying to preserve. That's the whole beauty of this method, is that you get the best of, say, spline modeling a car and other software with all the flexibility, ease of use, real-time feedback of polygons. It's really a truly great method. This does leave a little more of the hood to be finished up here. And in this case, I might just double-click, right? Because double left-click selects the edge loop. And then, of course, we could right-click a new face from edges. That's your fill tool. There is actually a fill tool there, but that fill, I'll show you the difference, that fill actually fills it in as triangles, right? So there is a fill tool that is technically filling it, but it fills with triangles. So if you guys remember from Maya, right, there was the fill tool in Maya for doing that exact same thing. Here it does technically fill it, but it fills with triangles. So the new face from edges or edges / vertices, if you're in vertex mode and you have vertices selected, that's more accurately filling it with a big n-gon, right? Because remember, this is filling it with an n-gon. You'll notice that this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertices. That makes it an n-gon. In this case, I really feel like, remember, we really want to try to avoid n-gons, right? Because that's going to make the shape pinch a little bit weird. If I wanted to loop cut to add a loop slice, you see how it automatically stops when it goes to that n-gon? The only thing loop slice works with well is quads, right? So I'm just going to turn that off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this vertex and this one, right? Remember, shift adds and subtracts your selections. And if I right-click, right, remember I'm in vertex context menu, and you'll see that there is the connect vertex pairs. What that'll do is that'll make an edge between those vertices. And there we go. And I can go back in here and tweak these a little bit. And now you see we have quads, right, again. We do have a triangle here. You'll notice, though, that this triangle is actually working fairly well for that shape. But if we really, really wanted to keep this quads, it's not terribly hard, right? I can go in here and I could easily either pick this edge or this one, right? Delete. Remember, you want to dissolve edges, though, right? You want to dissolve edges because that'll properly take the edge and the vertice out. And then I could always just do an Alt-C loop cut to just kind of put a little loop cut there. Go back to 1 for vertices, and then you see how I can select these two vertices across from each other. And then right-click, connect vertex pairs. And now you see how that's actually basically been something we've turned into quads and extended. Now, honestly, there are times where that triangle is going to create the exact kind of nice little shape that you want there, and it's going to be a good termination. So occasionally, if you're sparingly using triangles, they can be a cool way to kind of terminate. But this is one of those things where it was really just going to add an edge or two, and I didn't really need that to pinch that way. So I just took that as a great opportunity to show you guys that, hey, sometimes you connect up, and if you get to a triangle, look around and see if there's another way to kind of, extend that. Now, if you have to extend an edge loop across the whole entire model, maybe it's a better idea to keep it more efficient to leave that triangle, particularly if the shape's working for you and that star that it creates is not doing any weird stuff. Sometimes that shape does actually give you what you want. It like creates a nice little kind of termination point, right? But in this case, it added like an extra edge, right? So it's kind of worth it just to kind of extend it forward. But you see we've got this kind of like cool sweeping flow for the hood, and it kind of swoops into the fender there. And this is just part of the beauty of this method, is it really kind of allows you to get all the benefits of spline modeling a car, right? But instead of drawing curves out that follow the paneling or shapes you want, right, you're using the extrude and bridge border edges to do it and connect it up. So kind of just quick little reminders about that stuff, right? And we'll, of course, keep doing some more stuff. I feel like there's some more edge loop work we could do in here. We'll save that for another day, though, because I did want to kind of reiterate a little bit more that manipulation reorienting. In this case, this is supposed to be open, so we have a vent here. So I'm going to go to 2 for edge. And I'm going to double left click, right, because that just selects that border edge loop there. And remember, we can just hit Control E for extrude and just middle mouse click drag back in there. And that just gives us a little bit of that. Maybe scale in a little bit. Of course, if I want to, I can do some minor little tweaks. All right, so I can just tweak some shapes here a little bit if I want to, just to get those kind of fitting a little bit better the way we want. There we go. And of course, I could double click again and Control E. Middle mouse click drag back. Maybe W for move just to move it in. And see how it kind of creates that little lip there that we can then kind of put like some grading into. And I'll kind of do it more simple, kind of like long kind of metal bar grading. And that'll be one of those things where I'll realistically kind of probably create this a new object. So I'll go 4 for object mode. And then we can go to add, mesh. And let's drop a cube in. And you see how it's kind of its own object now. Now remember, I like to keep the center kind of on the center of the world. So I'll go to 3 for face mode. And you see that's already selected. So I hit W for move, grab the green arrow. And of course we can hit R for scale. Make this a lot smaller. Grab that green to make it smaller that direction. Left click to grab the red, which is the X, to make it longer. E for rotate. And I can kind of rotate a little on the red, right? Because remember, you've got these options. Now in this case, what if I wanted to kind of make this, because it's going to kind of have like these little grates overlapping on top of each other. What if I wanted to actually have this thinner, right? If I turn scale on right now, and I try to make this thinner, you see how it kind of distorts it? So that's where you can go up to global here and turn this on to normal. And you see how it uses the normal direction to do a much better job of that. You might even try local. In this case, though, since I didn't actually rotate this, you won't see it as much. So that's what kind of local would usually give you. But I could also go to normal. And that should do a pretty good job of giving us the average normal direction. If it doesn't and it's off a little bit, you can always select the face. See how it kind of orients it a little bit better? And I go in here and you set little plus. Right, so I'm going right up to that little kind of global normal little area there. That plus now saves that orientation. So if I was to select linked, you see how it uses that orientation? So you can actually save these. And then you can go back in here. You see that there it is. If you have multiple, it'll show you multiple in here. You can kind of highlight the active one. But then you can also hit X to kind of turn it off. So once again, you see how normal, quite cool. And you really get this kind of neat little extra benefit from these. I'm going to hit W for move, kind of move it along the red. R for scale it out a little bit longer this way. Probably move it back a little bit more. Now remember, you can hit Control D. Right, and that'll duplicate that object. There we go. Or those faces, I should say. And then, of course, I can hit Control D again. Duplicate that. Of course, I can go back up here and select linked. Control D. And, of course, if I need to, I can hit R for scale. Scale it in a little bit there. Maybe a little bit more. I can always adjust those a little more later on, too. Control D. There we go. Now in this case, you might be moving them off center a little bit. That's okay. We can always center them a little bit better later on. But I really wanted to try to get you guys to kind of see how you could start to make some little paneling here. Now, here's one of the other neat things that you could do, right? Like say at this point I want to kind of do a little bit of maybe lengthening these this way. I could select these faces on the ends here. Right? And I can hit W for move, but I can also go back up here and I can switch to normal. And you saw these are all using their normal direction now. So you can actually move them exactly along that face direction. So these are some of the neat things you could do with reorienting your manipulators. If I wanted to, of course, I could go back to turn on individual origins as well and scale. And you see how those will kind of scale on their own. So I really wanted to kind of get you guys to see some of these extra options. I'm going to save that for now because it's 9:34. We'll kind of keep doing a little more work to that. But I really wanted to start to get you guys to see how, once again, your ability to duplicate, right, Control D, whatever polygons you've selected, makes it quite easy within one object to create your grading, right? But also I wanted to give you some practical examples here and on your wheels of how you could reorient your positions as well as even the orientation itself, the rotation of the manipulator. I'm going to save that because I want to show you this a little more again on Thursday, right? So we'll come back and do a little more stuff with this. So you'll have a couple of videos in which I actually go over it. All right, that'll probably be a great place to stop the recording.